Inside the halls of San Diego State University lies a program dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast that takes you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State. Our goal is to show the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alums on a pathway to journalism success. And now, here's your host, Josh Sushan.
This week on the Where You At podcast, we are talking visual storytelling. We're discussing feature producing and also sports documentaries, including what is one of my favorite things to watch on TV. I am super excited about this week's podcast. Our guest is Chidozie Ononiwu. He attended San Diego State from 2009 through 2013. He's already done a lot of really fascinating things, including working for 30 for 30. That's ESPN's sports documentary window, which is really great. These days, he works for the Riot Games, doing some really fascinating promotion of esports. And we're excited to learn more about how he got to these positions in his life and in his career. So Chidozie, welcome to the Where You At podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on here. Thank you.
All right, so let's get right to it. I always like to start. I know why I went to San Diego State. I always like to know other people. Why San Diego State? What drew you to Montezuma Mesa?
So for me, being a Bay Area kid, I always had this like laid back lifestyle. I was always in this mode of like, wanting to just be calm about life. And when I was getting out of high school, I had some offers to UCLA, USC, things of that nature. And it just didn't, for some reason, LA just didn't feel right to me. I didn't want to stay at home in the Bay Area. I wanted something different, but I still wanted to go somewhere where it felt like home still. And I came to San Diego one day with my parents, and we got lost in Coronado. And I was looking at San Diego from across the water, and I just said to myself, dang, this seems like the place to be. And then I went to the Montezuma Road area and just looked at all these, like mission-looking buildings on campus. And I was like, yeah, I just, something feels right about this. And it was the greatest decision I've ever made.
So let's pretend like it's freshman year once again. We're sitting next to each other in some class. We don't know each other. We start saying hello, getting to know each other. And I say to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say to me when you were a freshman in high school, or excuse me, a freshman in college? What are you going to do? What do you want to be when you grow up?
I would tell you that I want to do a call. I want to be the color commentary guy for the Super Bowl. That's what I would tell you. I want to be Mike Breen and call the NBA championship. I want to do the World Cup. I've always had this real colorful personality, and I've always wanted, sports runs my life. And so I've always wanted to be the guy that gets to do the major Vin Scully calls, like some iconic call in some form of fashion that people remember the guy that did that call in that moment that changed the world of sports. And so that was what I would tell you if I was a freshman in college.
And then from there, who are the main people that you meet in college, whether that's another student, whether that's a professor, whether that's class, whether that's activities that you get involved with? Where do you start to develop like the ideas and start to get on your path for where you're going next?
I always said this to somebody a long time ago. The JMS series of classes are like that first introductory to media class that you take really is something that's important for someone who wants to be a journalist, because you might have all these ideas in your head and you might have all these thoughts of what you think you could do, but when you start getting to introductory to like contemporary media type classes, it really starts to hone in on your thoughts that you have in your head to really put your perspective, be able to put it on paper, or to be able to make it something that's tangible that somebody else can understand, not just something that sounds good in your head. On top of that, some of the clubs like the public relations and the advertising club and things of that nature, like are things that really helped you to like just get things like honed in. That's the big thing I say about people, like go to the public relations types of clubs on campus, because it'll help you with your words. It'll help you to get communication with another person to where if you're speaking on a microphone, you will absolutely be understood rather than just talking like you're talking to your buddy, So for me, those types of classes where it was like those introductory to media classes were big for me, but also the clubs of like advertising and public relations type of clubs were very big for me because it allows you to communicate with people that probably know more than you about these situations, and can help you get your thoughts more succinct.
I look back on my time at San Diego State, and I was a big daily Aztec guy. I did a little bit at KCR, and for me, I think a really key component for me is just constantly thinking of story ideas, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, we got a game story to write, but we got a preview to write leading into that. We want a feature story. Okay, who are we going to write this feature story about? What's the angle going to be? Like, what are the different questions that we're going to ask? And I feel like to this day, I am just constantly thinking about story ideas, whether that's for a daily newspaper, whether that's for a blog, whether that is for a sports documentary, whether it's a big picture feature. And I think about, is this a short? Is this kind of medium? Is this long? Is this a book? And so for you, when did you start to formalize in your mind, these are the types of stories that I want to tell, and this is the proper length and how to tell these stories?
You know what? That's a great question, because for me, it actually started away from the ideation of things. For me, it started from just like watching TV. And for some reason, you would see a commercial, you would see a movie, you would see a TV show, and the way something was shot, or the way an angle of light came in, or the way something was looked at by a lens, would all of a sudden spark something in me. And I didn't know that about myself until it randomly just happened one day. And I thought to myself, like, I really wonder if I could do something like that, but with this idea that I already had. How would that look? What would it be? Who would be in it? Who would be involved? Those kinds of things are the things that were going through my head. But what you just said is extremely imperative, because constant ideation is the way, when it comes to this kind of world that we're in of journalism, it always is about constant ideation of whenever, especially for me, it would be sports. So in sports, there's a big storyline of this game. How many different stories can I get from this particular one game that's coming in? For instance, what just happened in the NFL with Aaron Rodgers getting hurt and his season's over, I would think of maybe 4 or 5 different ideas, whether it be a short, like you said. I would think of a short, I think of a long version of it, I think of a feature length of it, I think of like a real small trailer of it, what would be a 30-second commercial of what I'm trying to do, and I would get it all down. I would put it all down on paper, and that's how I would kind of go through my processes of like, I would combine what I'm seeing on a daily basis out in the world with the ideation that I'm getting from just TV or sports or whatever is already happening in the sports world that I would be exposed to.
Are you a guy who writes down notes? Do you type it up in your phone? Do you have like spreadsheet? Like where do you keep your notes?
Yeah, I'm a big iPhone notes guy. So I have this random, if you look at my notes in my iPhone, it'll just be chicken scratch of like something that I saw, and it's in like my vocabulary of like just the most random words, but I understand it. But then it's a reminder to me, because of how crazy random it looks. It's a reminder from my college days that I have to take this chicken scratch looking thing and make it sound like someone can understand it. So it forces me to change what it is that I'm writing once I make it an official document that I turn into like a feature.
Okay, so as you're leaving San Diego State, it's quite the daunting task getting started. There's no more college life. Now you got to actually get out there and find jobs and find work. What was your strategy that our current students can learn from in terms of what you did, what worked, what did not work, to try to get out there and find your specific path?
I would say that my big thing was I had to just get out there, and I had to be okay with the Philadelphia 76ers have that trust the process. Like, you have to really believe heavily in yourself in this business. And so I have this ridiculous, weirdly ignorant confidence in myself when it comes to making sure that even if you're going to say no to me, you're going to hear me. Mm-hmm. So I just really got on any type of journalist convention I could find. I was hitting up different big named like journalists that I was seeing. Like I was hitting up Stephen A. Smith. I was hitting up, Kevin Connors, and rest in peace, Stuart Scott. Like, I was hitting up everybody that I knew was a big name. Eventually, I got I got to hear back from one of them, and that's what led to me getting into the industry in the first place.
Well, tell that story. Who got back to you, and let's get into that.
So later on, after a couple years of after school of just being kind of in regular jobs, I had gotten a job with Shally Zomarodi at Fox 5 locally, things of that nature. I finally got hit back up by Kevin Connors, and he basically was like, here's who to contact, here's who to get in touch with in terms of getting started at ESPN. And I hit that person up. I gave all the applications and all that stuff. And because of the influence of the fact that I hit up the right person, I was able to get just a look at being a PA at ESPN. And I knew in myself that if I could just get in the door, I would do all the rest of the work that I needed to do to work my way up at that point. And so I did the interview. For some reason, it didn't go as well as I'd hoped because I didn't end up getting the job. But then later on, I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I didn't get the ESPN job, and we're all sad about it. She was like, hit them up again. Hit them up one more time and ask the contact that you had, like, what did you do wrong? Or is there anything you could have done better? I hit that person up, and within an hour, I got a confirmation email that I actually did get the job. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Wow. So I think I'm so glad that your mom told you that. I wish your mom would tell that to me because I feel like whenever you don't get something that you want, especially a job, the ego is bruised and you kind of crawl up into a shell, right? And you don't want to get further ego diminished by finding out why you didn't get the job or what you did wrong. But it's really important to find out what you can do better. And then as it turns out with this one, it leads to the job.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's what you just said is so poignant because when we go into that shell, it often affects the future things that we're going to do, because now that we've already taken that first rejection, we're thinking to ourselves, if I couldn't get this one, then who else is going to say yes to me? Right. So then it now makes you almost think of a different course of action for something else, when in reality, you should have just stayed on the course you were on and trusted in the process that it's going to take a long time. And so when that happened, I said, you know what? I know I've been living in sunny San Diego for a while, and they're asking me to come all the way to Bristol, Connecticut, but I got to do what I got to do. At some point I knew I was going to make it back to San Diego. So I said, I got to pack up and I got to go live the dream. And that's what I did.
Tell us about the process of going from you want to be Vin Scully or, you want to be live at these big games to, all right, I'm going to be behind the scenes. I'm going to be the guy who's going to work behind the scenes and compile the footage and the interviews and the features. Tell us about that transformation.
That was a really hard one for me because since I was a kid, before I even got to be that freshman in college answer, I was maybe 7 years old, already wanting to do that. And so for me, the transition of saying, hey, I'm not going to be in front of the camera, I'm going to be behind it, was a tough one for me because I thought to myself, am I saying goodbye to that dream that I had, or is this just a different path to get to the same dream? And when I first got to ESPN, the amount of behind the scenes work, they had me doing Sports Center with Scott Van Pelt. Scott Van Pelt is one of the people that really encouraged me a lot when I first got here, got there. And so when I first started, it was a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of grunt work, and it really discourages you from, what you thought you wanted. So I just kept the faith, and I said, you know what? I'm going to make the most of this particular opportunity that I'm doing, because I don't know where it's going to lead. And I know I have a bunch of ideas to give out in the sports world. This is how I got to do it. So I did it, and they had me doing Sports Center first. I transitioned from Sports Center into college football, and I was basically running all of ESPN2 every Saturday and ABC every Saturday night for the West Coast games. And it was I had a blast. I had an absolute blast. And through having that blast, that's what kind of started to fully get that transition of, you know what? It's okay to not be the Vin Scully, because there's plenty of people that are directors, that are, camera people, that are all these other types of editorial people that are amazing at what they do, and they really bring life to what it is that the Vin Scullys do. So I once I was able to mentally get past that, I said, you know what, I can enjoy this. I can really make something of this. And so that's how I ended up getting into that. And I had to really appreciate, it made me appreciate live television in a new way. Being behind the scenes, knowing that people that see Vin Scully, people that see Mike Breen, and people that see all these iconic, people that are doing the on-camera stuff, you don't realize just how much is happening behind the scenes that allows those people to do what they do so flawlessly, because it just looks so flawless. You don't know. But it really gave me a different appreciation for the behind the scenes stuff.
Let's talk about how fast-paced and intense it can be. People screaming and yelling. You've got, this person saying, okay, the replay's not ready, or, do we need that replay? Okay, there's so many different things that are happening with live TV. It can get really heated. It can be very stressful. What were some of your strategies to remain calm, be a good teammate, and be able to make sure that this looks flawless, even if it's chaos behind the scenes?
You know what? Am I okay to shout some people out on here? Because
of course, please do.
I have some people, my coworkers that were at ESPN that were in the trenches with me. Damian, Sophia LaFrance, Andrew Disler, Spencer Jackson. Those types of people were really in the trenches with me. So it always helps to have a good team of people around you. So during those college football Saturdays, the process would be, we come in at 9 a.m, we have a morning meeting. First game of the day doesn't start till about maybe 11 o'clock noon on the East Coast, 9 o'clock over here on the West Coast. And so we would come in, do the meeting, start to get everything prepared for the day. And immediately, once that 12 o'clock block hits of college football games, it is nonstop. And my producers, my boy Riv, Lem, Deez, they all had different styles. And I would always be with Riv, and Riv was a very calm, mild-mannered guy. But Lem and Deez were not exactly the most calm people. And so you have to understand, given that certain Saturday, who you're going to be working with. And when I know I'm working with a certain person, I immediately get in my zone with my team of my coworkers of look, this is what we're dealing with today. They help me calm down because they're also doing things to help me out. They're doing their own games on a different network. I would have ESPN2 every game on there, but then Disler would probably have ESPN, and Spencer would maybe have ABC or ACC Network or whatever the case is. And so we're always constantly in communication with each other. And if they saw something, they would alert me to it immediately so that I could tell my leading producer, hey, this happened. Do you want it? Give them the options. I already got it. Do you want it? And also my producers always believed in the fact that we know what good TV looks like. So whenever we had good TV that we needed to get on television, we would say, hey, we'd fight for it. We'd say, hey, this has to go on right now. Don't worry about what it looks like. It has to go on right now. And they would trust us. And they would, if it's good enough, we know what good TV looks like. So I think that was the big thing for me, was having a good team of people around you and being able to trust that. Just on any good team, no matter who you are, you've got to trust the people around you.
What does make good TV? I know that's an extremely simple question and basic, right? Because, for a lot of people who are watching sports, what makes good TV is their team winning. But Big picture, what does make good TV on a Saturday when it's college football?
College football making good TV, something that we do a lot of is the scene behind the scene. That's a big thing that we do, where you might see a normal touchdown that happens. It's a typical guy runs a 15-yard touchdown. But all of a sudden, in the backdrop of that guy, there's a sign that is a once-in-a-lifetime sign that goes with the play that just happened. And it's so beautifully placed in the camera angle that you just have to have it. So it's an eye popper. So therefore, you're going to go ahead and say, hey, we've got this crazy thing that happened behind the actual action of what we're looking at. We have to go get that in. Or, there's cool stuff where a celebration was cool, a last second thing was cool, an upset happens that you weren't expecting, things of that nature, where all of a sudden a big team is struggling with a team that they were supposed to beat by 30. So for me, we were constantly on Saturdays paying attention to all those different types of things. I would have 20 screens in front of me, and I'm seeing every single game in America that is happening simultaneously. So it was probably the craziest experience I've ever had being at ESPN. And it really helped me transition into scripted television with 30 for 30 and non-live television being on ESPN Plus team, that being able to do the live TV in that moment really was a blessing for me.
Okay, you just mentioned 30 for 30. Let's get to this. So for people who don't know, 30 for 30 was something that was the brainchild, I believe, of Bill Simmons. The idea was there was going to be 30 sports documentaries that took place during the first 30 years of ESPN's existence. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of like time capsules. And I think that they're just fabulous sports journalism. I think it's some of the best work that ESPN has ever done. How do you get started working on the scripted television, these documentaries?
Going back to your ideation thing earlier on, I came to Connecticut and I just was beaming with ideas of stories, of things that I would have, because of 30 for 30. I came to ESPN thinking, if they could make this 30 for 30, we always do that in sports. When we see something happen, we're like, oh my gosh, that's going to make a great 30 for 30, right? So I came in just like any other person, thinking that, that would be a great 30 for 30, but I also wanted to make E60s and I wanted to make all the other little, more minor documentaries that we make at ESPN. And through the college football route, I was always pushing forward ideas that were almost kind of like documentary-esque and that weren't really realistic for live television. And so after the 100th no of my idea, my boy Disler, who I was talking about earlier, came to me and said, you know what? Like, your ideas are always awesome. You're just in the wrong department. And he had already transitioned into ESPN, the ESPN Plus team at that time. And so he said, why don't you just start coming to think about our team on the ESPN Plus side? And I said, you know what? That's not a bad idea, but who do I talk to? So he started telling me the names of people, Lindsay Ravegno and, Talea and all these other people. And so I started hitting them up just ruthlessly, just like, I have to talk to you. I have to get time with you. Please, if I get 30 minutes of your time. And all those people I just named were so gracious to be able to give me their time. Talea really walked me through the types of things that if I do get into that team, what I'm going to encounter, what it's going to take, what kind of content creation goes into that kind of stuff. And when the time came, the three people, Kati, Talea, and Lindsay, they all fought for me to get into that team. And so I got into the team and I became the documentary developer for 30 for 30. So basically, anytime, I don't want to name drop, but okay.
Go ahead and name drop. It's fine.
I'll name drop. So basically, every single week, I was having Zoom meetings with the biggest sports stars you could ever think of. Like what I would be on with Sue Bird, Michael Phelps, Michael Jordan's son, like whoever you could think of. I was on meetings with them every single week, and they would pitch documentaries to us, and it would have to go through me first. And if it's a good idea and we have the budget for it, I would say, okay, I have to create a presentation now to go to the big bosses to get the funding, to get the, we have to go through all the different avenues that would start the train getting to a documentary. If it's not, I would veto it right there and then. On top of that, I would also be pushing my own ideas forward to also have those types of things come forward. I don't know if you ever saw the Savannah Bananas, but the Savannah Bananas was completely pigeonholed by me to be able to be pushed forward because I fought for it, because I saw a little tiny blip E60 that we did on them years before, and I said, we need to turn this into a full-length show because there's something special about Savannah, Georgia, and what they got building over there. And we got on the phone with all the guys over there at the Bananas franchise, and eventually we were able to push it forward. They've still got things in production as we speak that I really fought for, and I'm really proud of things that are going to start coming out that I wouldn't be coming out had I not really fought for them. So that really, doing that documentary development of me developing my own documentaries, but also being able to have the power to say, no, that's not a good idea, or we don't have the funding for that, or that's a great idea. was having that kind of power at a place like ESPN was probably the like one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do in my life.
I'm so fascinated by this, right? Because you're the initial gatekeeper.
Yeah, the gatekeeper. That's what they called me, gatekeeper. Yeah.
I think that telecommunications and film students can learn from this. I think that journalists can learn from this. What makes a good pitch? What makes a bad pitch? What are the different things that you're looking to hear, or the things that make you say, nope, can't do that? What makes a good pitch?
Oh, that's a great question, man. The the pitches that I said no to really also affected how I would do my own pitches, because a great pitch really it doesn't necessarily have to wow you, but it has to be practical. And when I say practical, I mean that you've got to have a practical budget for whatever you think this pitch is going to cost you. You've got to have a practical timeline for whatever you think this pitch is going to take, like however long you think this pitch is going to take to create. And then your idea has to be something in a space where either it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's inventing a new spoke on the wheel, or it's completely reinventing the wheel altogether. And it's something that is giving us a look into a space and time that we haven't seen before. Those are the big key elements for me that I learned over my time there that really pushed the envelope of getting something greenlit by, at my time. For me, it was Disney, or it was ESPN, or Hulu. So we had all those different avenues we could send something to. If I said yes to something, to then get it to the bosses. So for me, I felt like new journalists who were coming up, because we had, as much as I had a lot of like, the big named athletes that were pitching stuff to me, I also had a lot of, newer journalists and newer filmmakers who tried to pitch to me as well, who were just coming up in the game and trying to get their name out there. And the first thing that I would see in them is they are so locked in on trying to make sure that they have the newest, coolest idea that sometimes they would lose sight of the fact that they had a great idea in there, but if they kind of tweaked it and made it more of just practical, they would have actually gotten it greenlit. But because they came at it from the angle of, I have to get the newest, coolest thing, it actually fell flat. So for me, it was more so about, if you've got a good idea, really run with it and don't try to create too much of the reinvention of the wheel if you don't need to. And so that was my big thing for it.
I'm curious to get your opinion about this when it comes to sports documentaries, because one of the things that I enjoy so much about 30 for 30 is that this is raw, and the subjects may not like everything that's in here. You start to see more and more sports documentaries now where the subject is an executive producer and he or she ends up having quite a big say in the final product. So they are the gatekeepers for what gets in and what doesn't get in. And they might allow a little bit of negative stuff about them to get in, but it's going to be, negative stuff that just shows still like what makes them tick kind of thing. But the only way that you're going to get, say, a Derek Jeter or a Michael Jordan to participate in this is in order to give them some sort of creative license, some sort of creative power. And so I'm curious how you weigh the pros and cons of allowing the superstar athlete to be a part of it and have a say in it versus you're losing your journalistic integrity a little bit along the way.
That's a huge question. From what I've personally witnessed, because I did work on Man in the Arena with Tom Brady, and I was part of the Derek Jeter Captain Series. When it comes to those types of people, you have to more so gauge them and what they're willing to sacrifice more than you and what you're willing to sacrifice. Because you're the network. You're the one who's going to put this out in the first place. So that, like, for me, I didn't like the fact that I never was okay with ESPN just living off of its name. I was still of the mindset that we still have to keep pushing the envelope no matter what, even though we're the biggest sports network in the world, it doesn't matter. So that being said, if we're going to work with a Tom Brady and we're going to work with a Derek Jeter, they might be the GOATs at what they did, but that doesn't mean they're the GOATs at what we do. So for me, it was always more about gauging how much are they willing to sacrifice to allow us to still get what we need, while also not offending them too much in the process, because obviously you don't want them to say no to the project altogether. So you want to still get their buy-in to whatever it is that you're doing, but it's never about them. It's still, at the end of the day, always about us. And so that's the mindset I always had when it came to going into those kinds of things of like, we have to make sure that if we're going to do this, that they still have to understand that we're the platform, not them. I felt like the people that were the gatekeepers for that concept, the Lindsay Ravegnos of the world and people like that, they did a great job always of making sure that we didn't sacrifice so much to the point where our journalistic integrity was compromised and we just gave a flat product out there. And so that's why we had, on those types of things, the Tom Brady's and those types of people, we have so many other voices that come in, the Michael Strahans and the other people that were their anti-person, to be able to say, tell us how it really was. Like, how did you actually feel? Don't sugarcoat it because to give that person a little bit of, whatever you want. Like, you have to tell us from your angle how you actually felt in that moment. And they really gave that to us. And we put a lot of those types of things in.
Another thing that I'm really curious. So you're at the very beginning stages of these sports documentaries. You're the one who's saying like, yes, I think this is going to be an idea. And so you get it going. Mm-hmm. Once it comes out, I'm curious for you to compare the pitch, the vision, what you pitched to your bosses, and then the final product and all the different peaks and valleys that comes along the way.
Yeah. It's a whirlwind. And, I know we're going to talk about what I did with Riot later on, but the whirlwind for me at ESPN when it came to the 30 for 30 and the ESPN Plus crew was, at Riot, I would have like a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks tops to turn something around. But when it comes to ESPN, we were working on timelines that are like, this is not going to come out for a year. This is not going to come out for a year and a half. This is not going to come out for 8 months or whatever it is. So being able to see the amount of times we shift direction, or we take something out, or we put something in, or we think that we don't have enough budget for this, we got to ask for more money, or, all the different things, was really, really crazy to me, because I didn't think that going into that many changes and things were going to happen. I thought to myself, when you make a documentary, it's not scripted TV. You're going off of people's pure emotions and pure feelings. So you've got to be able to like really, crank this out, because we're not doing a lot of double takes, because the person's talking about their actual life. They're actually talking about there's no script for this. So I didn't realize that you could actually have this many changes happen in this particular space of documentary making until I actually saw it for myself. The amount of different versions, the amount of mixing and coloring that happens, the amount of editorial process that happens was really eye-opening to me, and how long it takes to put out something. It was really fascinating for me.
Whenever I watch the sports documentaries, I'm always just intrigued by the lighting and where the subjects are put and what's around them, like the background, and when it's more casual walking around and when it's formal seated and things like that. And all of that stuff, I just think there's such a science and art to that. That's super interesting. Before we get to the Riot Games, I kind of want to end this topic about this question. If someone is a student and they want to get involved in any kind of documentary, we're talking sports documentaries, but I think that everything you've said correlates to any type of genre. What is someone who is roughly 18 to 23 years old should know about, if they want to get into making documentaries, they need to start preparing themselves to do?
Oh, man. If you're of that age and you want to start getting into documentaries, one big thing that you're going to want to learn is that I didn't learn, so I would have told my younger self this, is knowing the art of the camera and getting to understand what each camera, needing to know every camera, but like needing to know what major films, what major documentaries, what cameras they used on those types of documentaries, because knowing the type of camera that what it does will affect how the kind of shot that you're going to want. And those types of things are very, very important, because I'm always fascinated by Last Chance U and the way they shoot their camera in the confessional spaces when the players and the coaches are looking at the camera. and how it's always a downward angle looking up at the person, but they're still looking off camera. And you got to know, okay, that's this type of camera, and that's the best camera I can use for that type of angle, and that's the dramatic effect that angle gives me. You got to know those types of things, because if they were now to do that exact same pose, but the camera's from the side, or it's from up above, or it's from the right, the left, like it might not be as dramatic, and you might not feel that emotion that they're trying to have you feel now. And now the moment is lost. So they might be talking about a death that happened that spurred their love for this sport that they play. You're not going to feel that hurt that they're feeling in that moment, because the camera is on the wrong angle. And you have to have, like, documentaries are made and broken by camera angles. So you have to really understand going into this thing where you stand with cameras, and where you stand with lenses, and where you stand with what you want something to look like in your head, and how it's going to come out on camera.
Man, I love that answer. And I'm never going to look at it. I never even would have thought of that either. Like, I just learned something about, the power of the angle and the different cameras. And now every time I watch a documentary, I'm totally going to be studying this angle and all of that, yes, because that's what leads to this emotion.
It's a sickness. It's become a sickness, and it's become worse ever since I left ESPN, because I didn't realize how much I actually subconsciously pay attention to those things until after I left. And now I'm the one who's the director now. And so I have to be cognizant of what an angle does to a shot. And you might have the greatest idea for a documentary, and you may ruin your documentary because you don't have the right shot. And so I think more so about documentaries is not just the idea you have, but you have to know how it's going to look. You might have the greatest idea, but if it doesn't look right, it won't. What you're trying to get across still won't happen.
So why do you leave? Man, this sounds so cool. This sounds, this sounds amazing. You're part of like these incredible documentaries. It's just fabulous journalism. You get to take your time. You're getting to work for the worldwide leader. Why do you leave and go to the Riot Games? What got inside you to make this decision?
I'm going to be totally honest with you here. I don't think I've ever really talked about this with anybody before, but I honestly just missed home. I missed home. And home being San Diego became home for me, and I missed it. The East Coast weather really got to me. I was away from my family. My family's up in Northern California. So during the pandemic, being in Connecticut all that time, it just really got me to think, I want to do this on a bigger scale, because I want to have more responsibility than I even had. And I want to do it while being able to be at home. And so I was looking around the industry, and I saw this Riot Games opening for their documentary producer position, and I didn't know anything about the games that Riot Games played. I didn't know anything about League of Legends or Valorant, that those games happen. But I said, you know what? It's a new challenge. What could possibly be harder than what I've gone through at ESPN with all the different types of things I've had to do there? So I said, you know what? If it allows me to be able to get home and I get to learn something new, and I get to increase my salary, because California is not easy to live in with money wise. So I said, all right, you know what? I can do this. And that was honestly, that happened on January 1st. I woke up and I said, I need to get back home to San Diego. And I didn't get that job. And I applied for that job that week, and I didn't get that job until the summer. I started in June. So goes to your earlier point of, like, you have to be patient. They have to be patient. I went through a 4-step interview process to get that Riot job. And on the last day, when I finally got it, they put me in 4-hour interview, 1 hour per person of different people that I was going to encounter in that job. HR, the big boss of the content group, one of my actual current coworkers, and then my current boss, all 4 of them for an hour apiece. It was grueling, but if you really believe in yourself, nothing is more grueling than, nothing is worse than being afraid of an opportunity, because opportunities don't come to everybody. So you have to just go for it when you see it. And that's what I did. So that's how I ended up back here. And boy, has it been a whirlwind since I got here.
I watched some of the videos that you sent me, and I knew that esports was a big deal. That's not something that I'm part of, but I know that it was a big deal. And then I'm watching some of the features that you've made, and the fan reaction, the way that they get all dressed up, the way that they, the energy, the passion, and the idea that all of these people are inside an arena essentially watching people play video games, but the intensity blew me away. And so I'm wondering, for you, as someone who was not part of this world, how you get yourself into this world and capture this so that someone like me who didn't know about it is like, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? What am I missing here?
I'm so glad you said it the way you just said it, because me coming into this space of this esports world and not knowing anything, but being a storyteller and knowing that I could tell you, I could do a documentary about this pencil, knowing I can do that, but not knowing anything about this world really helped me to be able to just sit back and just watch what was happening. There's these two guys, Brian Bennett and Carr Thompson, who have taken me under their wing, who have been at Riot for about 10 years now. And they've been through the ringer with that company and gone all over the world to do these documentaries before I got there. And they really helped me to start to get a lot of exposure about how they like to do things, what they like things to look like. And so, yeah, I came in wide-eyed, green behind the ears, and they threw me right into the fire. I was so taken aback by the fact that people will fill a professional stadium or arena to watch a 5-on-5 of guys sitting at a computer. Like, that concept blew my mind. And in that moment, I realized there's a lot of people that are like the people that I grew up knowing that are not in this world that won't know anything about what's going on. So my mission became, how do I get someone who's like me that doesn't know anything about this to all of a sudden care, or to feel the emotion that I would feel if I was behind the camera interviewing someone and they're telling me some really, deep, dark things about themselves. So I said, you know what? That's how this has to be something that affects, again, my shot selection of how do I get a person like yourself to be glued to what I'm doing, even though you don't know what's going on. And so that just became basically my thesis, my why of why I do what I do in this space is I already know that it's going to look good for the people who are already fans. But how do I bring in the other people who are not fans? That became my thing. So that's how I operate now.
My favorite one that I watched, and it was hard to pick, but my favorite one is there's the two girls, and one of them drives cars, and she is just like this maniac in like these empty parking lots of like doing circles and going super fast and spinning around. And they're all like scared, and she's just, another day at the office for her. And so I'm wondering if you can explain the importance of like the pre-interview and showing like the other thing that this subject does besides just play video games at a really high level.
Yeah, that's big for us. That is big for us, because our big mission statement here is that we want to humanize these players. These players have so many fans all over the world. And if they were to see that player walking in the street, they would be like, oh my gosh, oh my God, so-and-so is walking. But we want to be able to, dumb that down a little bit and bring the human aspect to these players. So we will sit and talk with them and really try to get human stories of like, have you had an adversity? Have you gone through anything where you felt like you weren't going to make it into this world of pro gaming? What are the types of things that you really aspired to be that were not pro gaming related? Do you still do those things now? How can we magnify whatever it is that you already do? And we found out that, the one girl that's name is Jazzy, that her brother was really into streetcars when she was growing up. At the time, she's still young. She's still 18, 19 years old. So we found out that her brother loves streetcars. So she grew up, really into streetcars. And she just, by messing around with her friends, taught herself how to drift. And so we decided that we're going to hire the number one drift instructor in Canada to come to Toronto. And we're going to make it seem like she doesn't know what she's doing, and he's just instructing all three of them on how to drift. And then he's going to get behind the wheel with her, and she's going to start whipping this thing. And he's going to be like, wait a minute, what in the world is going on here? And that's how we had to do. And we wanted a little fun element, but also like to bring it back to the point of it still has to tie into the game somehow. And so her reckless abandonment mentality or personality also fits into how she plays the game. And so that's how we tied the two together to make it still feel married, even though this drifting thing has absolutely nothing to do with the video game itself. So though we also want to humanize and make these people feel like, they are just one-to-one with these people, we still have to tie it to what they do professionally. And that's how we figured out how to do that.
All right, I want to wrap this up by using this phrase that ESPN has used, and that is the power of sports, right? Whether it's a 102-year-old woman who runs the 100-meter dash and the faster than anyone has ever done, whether it's the inspiration that we draw from them, whether it's humanizing them. Give us your just what it means to you to use the power of sports, not just what they do on the field, but how it relates to society.
Oh man, the power of sports is and it's an emotional thing. And I think when I was a kid, when I saw how emotional sports was, it made me know that for the rest of my life, I must be involved in this world in some form or fashion. And for you to be so young and to see something that can make you feel that way at that age, there's got to be real true power in it for it to make you feel that. And I don't know if there is anything on earth like sports. The way it galvanizes people, the way it saves people's lives, the way it brings people who may hate each other outside of it together. There's just nothing. I just don't know anything else like it. And, I really feel like that is the true testimony of what tests humans is sports, because it really is a universe. It's almost like music. It's a universal language that can bring almost anybody together. I just feel like that's something that you can't really live a bad life if you're involved in that kind of world,
All right. We like to wrap things up by bragging about other San Diego State alums who are making us proud, who are doing different things so that we can give them shout outs and spread the word about our fabulous alumni. So the floor is yours. You go first, and then I've got someone after you.
Awesome. Okay. So mine is going to be my boy, Max Garshman, also fellow Bay Area guy to me. Went to San Diego State a little bit after me. Man, like I met him when I first got to Connecticut, and we just immediately clicked. The second he said SDSU and I said SDSU, and we had already talked for like 5 minutes before we both realized, and there was something about our personalities that we were like, wait a minute, not only you have to be from where I'm from. And I'm like, but where'd you go to school? And he said SDSU, and I was like, oh my, this makes so much sense. And the fact that we just kind of knew we both were Aztecs before we even found out about each other was so crazy to me. And I want to give him a special shout out because, when you're on the other side of the country, you don't know anybody, you're basically fending for yourself. You're in this sports world that grinding. It's people like that really make you feel like you're still at home. And he came back to ESPN. He came back to the ESPN in LA. And he is grinding on the NBA side, doing amazing things for the NBA shows on ESPN in the LA office. And that's somebody that I'm really proud of, that, he's really doing his thing, Aztec alum, making everybody proud, man. I love it.
Sounds like there's another person I need to add to my master guest list for people to have on this podcast.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
All right. For my alum shout out this week, do you know Frank Williams, or he goes by P. Frank Williams?
Yes, P. Frank. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So P. Frank is unbelievable. He was at the Daily Aztec just a tiny bit before I was. It would take forever to explain, but he's an executive producer, a director, a showrunner, journalist. He has won Emmys. He is, okay, I'm going to go to his LinkedIn here to make sure that I get this right, but he is the executive producer and showrunner of the 50 Cent and Mona Scott Young produced series Hip Hop Homicides on WeTV and All Black. He was the EP showrunner of the Discovery Plus 4-part series Profile of the Black Man. He's also, there's a new Hulu documentary called Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told. I mean, he has written, you name it. He is just like the king of all media, and man, he is just awesome. And P. Frank Williams, it's hard to keep up with everything that he's doing because he's always got so many irons in the fire, but man, he is just a great Aztec and doing so many awesome things.
Yeah, man. What a great man. That when I heard that name, and I didn't even really know him personally like that, but that name was ringing bells, man. that name rang bells for sure.
We got to get you two connected. I know someone who knows P. Frank really, really well. So
Okay.
we'll see if we can get you guys connected. And I also want to get you connected more to the university, especially since you're back in San Diego. There's going to be a tailgate before the homecoming game in early November for JMS. We got to get you back on campus to meet like students and talk to them, because I know that there's so many people who would really enjoy hearing more about you and being mentored by you. So I'm gonna keep pushing to have you be a bigger part of the department.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate the ask. This was an honor for me to be a part of this. And anything that you got for me to be a part of, I'm there.
All right, sounds good. That is Chidozie Ononiwu. As a play-by-play announcer, it's my duty to get these things correct. I'm going to keep working on this. It's a good thing that you're not turning a 6-4-3 double play for me tonight. Thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. You have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to hearing all the rest of these episodes, man. These are great. Absolutely. Go Aztecs. My name is Josh Sushan. I'm your host, and we will talk to you again next week on the Where You At podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms, in person, or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.